We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. I'm excited for a particularly good client story today from Devin Sizemore. Devin, it's an honor to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me, man. Excited for this conversation. Such a fun and unique topic.
Thank you. So, my coffee mug is full of coffee with whiskey because that's what I need to get over the cold. And with that in hand, I'm all ready to hear your story. Wait, what are you drinking today?
We're just drinking electrolytes only because I've got 4 more meetings after this.
Electrolytes. I can't think about electrolytes without thinking about one of my favorite movies of all time, Idiocracy All the Way, which I would argue is a documentary, not a fiction movie. That we'll hopefully have a non-idiocratic conversation. So, Devin, tell us about your favorite client horror story. I'm all ears.
Yeah, it's so fun. I remember we did the pre-call just talking about, having owned a lot of companies and worked with a lot of businesses, there's so many stories to pull from. But I think the one we landed on is really interesting because it's one of those stories that I was sharing it over drinks at an event Friday. And by the end, people are like, you've got to be making this up. Like, there's no way that this is true. And so it's a slight deviation from a client horror story. It's a partner horror story. And if we go back in time, I was scaling a manufacturing company and I was sitting down with this gentleman and he was coming out of the banking industry and he's like, hey, you know what? I have this, we should do business together. It's basically the summary of that meeting. Great. Loved it. Then you fast forward a few weeks and he's like, hey, I found this guy. He has a great product that he's designed and he has a patent pending and it's a manufactured product in the motorcycle space. So let's do that. I'm like, oh, great.
By the way, I just want to pause as we're building up the excitement because you made a really interesting point in common that I actually think we've never hit on in a previous episode. That I always try to get at least one new point in, which is you're like, I'm going to get a conference and we started talking about doing business together. And I just want to point out how incredible it is. You meet someone and like 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, we should do business together. That's millions of dollars. And all of that is like, if people were a little bit more rational, you would do due diligence, get to know them, do business with people you've had high trust in, but it's like so human to be able to do business together, which is kind of the businessy analog to dating. Oh, you just meet someone in a bar. Okay. Like you knew them 5 minutes and you want to do untold things with them as well.
It's so true. And this is a very younger version of me too, because I do this a lot in current meetings, but we have a much better framework for how we move forward. So lessons learned, which is going to be a good outcome of the story because it happens. Matter of fact, we're launching a fun company in the golf space right now due to an introduction I made between two parties. We were at an event together and he goes, hey, that was a great conversation. You should jump in on this too. And now all of a sudden we're spinning up a company.
Yeah, it is incredible how we pretend we're rational, but really you just meet people and start doing these huge things together. Humans are an interesting species.
It's so true. So going back to that story. Yeah. So the first partner, right? We should do business together. Great. The seed was planted. He brings in this other guy who has a really cool product. We demo the product, like the concept. They want to raise capital and scale. Okay, great. That's interesting. And then I already had a fourth partner that I was doing business in a consulting industry. And so a couple different businesses going, but this is all around this manufacturing company. And so we took a run at it, built a pitch deck. We ended up landing an investor in maybe 14 days, cash in the bank in less than 20.
Wow.
So that's crazy and was super cool. And they loved the motorcycle space. They were really interesting partners. They funded well. They gave us a line of credit. They matched our terms. So all super positive.
Wait, by the way, I would just want to make another footnote. Building off my previous point, you just meet someone, let's do business together, let's date and get married, sleep together. There's this analog here of, wow, from idea to do it in 14 days to cash and bank in 20 days. This is kind of like the girl that you meet in a bar and next week you're living together. Like 2 days later, her toothbrush is
there. Yeah.
And like next week she's moving in. The week after she brought her dog in and changed the drapes.
And now you're getting married.
And now you're getting married. And I just want to point out, in the universe of business risk factors, knowing nothing else, this is already like red flags. If a friend of mine was like, yeah, I just met a girl at a bar and she moved in 4 days later, I would be like, dude, red flag universe.
Yeah, but you would hope that I had seen a few, but we didn't. Because what was so interesting is there was no friction on the beginning, right? And so the pitch deck was easy because I had just finished building decks for a few other projects. And so that was easy, and it just started flowing. And so we got the capital, we spun the company up, and we had a hard deadline to get ready to go to a big motorcycle event so we could promote the product, promote the brand, and get our first batch of orders. And so it was, I want to say it was like a 45 to 60 day kind of timeline to spin up the brand, get ready for the trade show, wrap the truck, and get to the show. So again, more compressed timeline. During that time, again, a lot of good, right? So it was a lot of like good conversations. The brand got born. We had really fun t-shirts, just like we do with the Connection Company.
By the way, I love it. I just want to point out, I think I might need to just continue the whole dating marriage metaphor through this. So now the dating version of this is you're in your honeymoon.
Yeah, like, right? So the money hit the bank. Yeah. Like the business is blooming.
Going well.
Yeah, we have two partners are like on their way to being full-time in the company. So they're like closing out their other projects and stuff. I'm basically spinning up the company. The other partners manufacturing and making sure the product's ready to demo. So we fast forward to the motorcycle event. We get down there, we make it. So we have branded swag, really cool business cards, hats, apparel. The product's demoed well. The investors are there with us. All 4 partners are there. We have booth babes. Like, it's just a full party show generating revenue. And we fast forward to the end of the show and we have orders. Like, we have people who want the product in a different way. So custom orders, cash is flowing. The brand exposure is good. We have leads to follow up on. We did some tuning at the show and ended up basically more than covering the cost of the show. So we're already positive. Like, again, all great. And then the awkward meeting conversation shows up. And this is where you find out that the one partner who's building the product basically decided, hey, I see a big future and we want to be greedy now. And so he, partner 1, right, latched on to partner 2. Well, it was actually the manufacturing partner and the first guy I talked to kind of connected. And the manufacturing partner started tainting the first partner I talked to and kind of won him over to his side and said, like, well, we could do this together. We don't really need those guys. Like, look at all the money, look at all this stuff. Like, we should push them out of the company.
Ooh.
And so we fast track to getting some legal docs that basically say, like, we're buying you out of the company.
I love this story. You're going a little too fast. So let's unpack that a bit. So when you found out, like, tell me a bit more about the manufacturing and getting the other guy onto a side and like how you realized that, how that went down and what happened there.
Yeah, so it started at the trade show. It was really interesting to watch. And, I have had a lot of companies before that. I've had many since. And I started to see the positioning then. So heading into this show, I had done 95% of the work with the brand, the scaling, the business, the foundation, the bank, all the stuff, getting it ready. When we showed up to the show, that one partner started to step in with the investors and kind of position himself as like, well, look at all this stuff I've done. And he started trying to take ownership and credibility for everything that was present, yet he actually wasn't involved in anything other than the product. And so I started to push back a little on him in the event, like, well, wait a second, like, that's not true. This isn't true. This isn't true. And then he got a little territorial at the event too. And again, trying to like position himself as this like amazing business owner and business professional with the investors. And then he would spend a lot of time with that other partner. So all those things sort of started to happen on this
I
trip
see.
where they drove down together. So they had a lot of car time. They then spent time with the investors at the event. And then myself and the other partner did come down and we were at the event too. But I saw the positioning. And then I think there was some abuse of expenses at the show. So another like red flag, right? Like, so some money started flowing at the show in weird ways. And that one partner kept justifying it to the investors in like really interesting ways, but he definitely spent more money than like I would have advised. And again, it was him kind of trying to like, oh, well, if we spend a little here, we form this partnership. If we spend a little there, we form that partnership. And so it's all fine. But all these things start to collectively add up to the positioning that then, follows up with, what then unfolds later.
I'm happy you asked the question because so many rich details came out there. You said 3 different things that I think are worth calling some attention out to, that are good lessons for people watching it. First, really interesting lesson here is the fundamental risk of a 3-way partnership of 2 of them grouping up on one person. It happens all the time. Like anytime, and you would think, oh no, 3 ways we can divide the responsibility more, but there's just this enormous fundamental risk in that structure. 2 on 1, you lose. So that's a structural thing to take into account. A second thing to take into account is at this conference, they took this car drive together. They got to know each other, and because you didn't really know either of them well, but through being forced to spend this intense time at the conference, that accentuates the relationship building. That gave them an opportunity to bond. Said differently, it would be very different if you had a little bit of a stronger relationship with one, a little bit of a stronger relationship with the other, and then over time you like developed it all together. But you all barely knowing each other, and then 2 of the 3 spending intense amounts of time together is just a factor for it to explode. Note, I'll continue the dating analog. It's sort of like meeting a girl and then immediately, traveling around the world together, because that's a sort of intense experience you have as soon as you start dating that makes the relationship stronger and bonds you. And that's why people love meeting someone and doing crazy things. Let's get married in Vegas tomorrow. But it also increases the risk because you don't really know them. So like, who are you actually marrying? Are you sure? And the third thing you mentioned something about, about the red flag of the spending. That I want to mention something on that too. Yeah. That when you start, people spend money with different prioritizations. Like, I might be very design oriented and think it's worth overspending design, but you might think design is a footnote, so you might think that I'm wasting money. Us having different spending prioritizations, first, if when it comes out in a context like this, it's on its own. It's not a problem. Okay, you're partnering with someone, he handles design, he spends more than I think is fine. It might be a yellow flag, but it's not a red flag. But what's interesting in this case is multiple yellow flags taken together turn into a red flag. So like overspending on this combined with this and this and this and this, various yellow flags together turn into a red flag.
You're totally right. And having had a good amount of partners, like, I love that first point, the imbalance, whether it's 2, 4, 12, yes. Like making sure that you're really paying attention to that is a huge lesson learned here. And then, fast tracking to just like all of the little yellow flags, which hindsight's 2020, right? In the moment, some of these things were just like, whatever. On reflection, you start to be like, okay, I can start to see where this path is leading.
Totally.
And then leaving that event, man, like it was a high, right? Like the investors are happy. There's cash flowing. We made a good amount at the event. All the partners are happy. We have good brand recognition. We have meetings set up to do wholesale sales, retail sales. Like it's all great. But what's interesting, especially in working with people who haven't had a business, right? And so this is another big kind of like establishment of understanding people's things, right? I am the only party that had previous businesses. The other partners, the manufacturing one has dabbled in stuff. The other guy came out of the banking space, and then we had, kind of a silent partner too. And that was a red flag too, is like, okay, they don't understand business. So they see all the green lights and start going like, ooh, I want this. And then again, they got to spend the whole car ride back together because I had to drive down separate. Right. And so now they're driving back, and the manipulative partner, who had a very clear agenda that we all played into, started to work away at the other partner and get him to see his vision and see the path, and started to really position with like, look, it's, if there's two of us, it's better revenue share. And, we already got the foundation and we don't need the other guys and blah, 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 blah. And we already have an attorney and all the stuff.
But by the way, I want to also call out a point you just mentioned in passing where you're like, it was not your first time doing this sort of thing, but both of them were new to these types of partnerships. I also want to call that out as another hindsight is 2020, of course, risk factor as well, where anyone that's been through the circus a few different times, you know how the circus goes. So it's interesting, people where it's their first time have this advantage and this disadvantage. The advantage is they're wide-eyed. They're often put in like too much energy, overwork, and also with people doing the first time, you can also guide them and train them more. But the disadvantage of people who are doing it the first time is they don't know how it goes, and they often have unrealistic expectations. And between those two taken together make them easy to manipulate, which is exactly what happened in your case.
Yeah, and so 100%. And I've had other bad business decisions, but in this one, this is when it gets really fun, right? Because like I said, everything else it's a Disney story, right? Like it's all so positive and it all just clicked and it all just worked and it's all amazing. And like I said, then, I end up getting the papers from the first partner I met with that basically say like, hey, we had equity in a couple projects. And so they basically said like, well, we want to take your equity out of this company and you can have the equity back in the other company. And as I was reading the paperwork, I was like, ooh, this is interesting. Like, I wonder, like, there's a motive at play that I don't understand yet. But fine, no worries. It wasn't a project I'm overly passionate about. Like, I have the skill set to scale, but it wasn't an industry or a product that I was like, oh, this is my identity. And so we did exit. And I don't know, if you're a faith person, that was,
Before we get into whether I'm a faith person or not, I'm curious to see the connection there. You made another offhand comment that I want to dive in. This is a weird and unique episode because you're throwing out all these really interesting things and you just like say it in passing and move on, and I'm digging in. So it's a fun style. We can do this more often, which is you made this super interesting point. You're like, yeah, it wasn't my identity, so I would have moved on. And it's fine. And by the way, that's another new point that's never come out before, which is really important, which is when you're doing something or you're working with a client or a project or a theme that ties into your identity. This is who I am. I'm like this. It makes it 1,000 times harder to like step away because suddenly, because it's part of your identity, it definitely becomes emotional. And as soon as it becomes emotional, you get like irrational and crazy humans. So I really like how you framed it. You're saying, because it was just this project, I thought I could make some money. It was interesting and fun, but it wasn't my identity. Because of that, that gave you this professional distance that allowed you to cut the cord and deal with it rationally. So kudos to you.
Which was a blessing. But I had a mentor, and this is a quote that is super relevant right here, is love business, don't love business.
Ooh.
And it's so good because my first big company was a marketing agency.
I love it.
And that company reached an exit moment where I needed to make a decision. Do I want to buy out the other partner and scale it, or do I want to be the one being bought out? And that mentor sat there and said, well, Devin, like, it sounds like you're in love with your business. And I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong. Like, it was my identity. It was my thing. And he's like, that's the problem. Like, you need to love business, meaning love the art of business and building business and the tactics of business, but it's just a business. And so as he was having that conversation with me, luckily, again, I had prior experience of knowing like, okay, I can exit, no big deal. There's always something else. So the combo of that, and again, that professional separation in this case, where I wasn't super attached to this company, allowed me to just go, you know what, fine. Like something feels off. My gut's telling me something's wrong. And let's just get out of the way. And no worries. We have some other companies we're focused on, and it'll be fine. And then this is when it gets really fun. Like if there weren't already enough lessons learned, the real drama's about to show up.
Oh yeah, baby. Let's go. I can't wait.
So start to finish, this has got to be from like first conversation to getting out of the company probably is like maybe 4 months. Right? So we're talking like met people, launched company, raised capital, went to an event, made money, kicked out of company in like a, let's say 4 to 6 month time span. I don't know the exact, it's probably right around 4 months. And after we got kicked out of the company, this is when it gets fun. So it had to be like maybe 48 hours later, I get a call from one of the investors who goes, hey, I'm looking at like the bank account and all this stuff and the updates and whatever, and like you and the other person aren't on there. Like what happened? And I'm like, oh, well, I thought they had discussed this with you and, this is what happened. And they said, hey, come meet us at the bank. And I remember going down to the bank. The investors were out of market. They flew into town. And I went down to the bank to meet with them. And they said, hey, we're going to take over the bank account. I'm like, I'm so confused. Like there's there's a lot of things happening right now I don't understand. And they started to explain, well, we have concerns about the other partners and whatever else. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. And so then I think they ended up working with the other partners for like 4 weeks and trying to like move the company forward and whatever. Well, it turns out behind the scenes, the one partner had started shifting money and doing all sorts of erroneous things.
The same sketchy partner, number one manufacturer.
Yeah. So he started talking. So once we got kicked out, he started talking the other partner into doing all these things, right? Like paying off personal debts, settling other things, buying appliances for the house out of the company. And like, I think they ran up like $100,000 in spending it was probably 14 to 20 days between getting kicked out of the company and the investors actually getting real FaceTime with me. And what's fascinating is the company ends up imploding. The one partner ends up stealing equipment and tools and an asset from the company and all sorts of stuff and kind of leaves the investors hanging. And so, like I said, it goes back to the faith statement I made. Like, if you're a person of faith or believe in the universe or whatever, like something reached down and said, Devin, turn left. And thank God I listened and didn't try to fight to stay because we created enough separation, myself and the other partner weren't liable for anything that happened. And so it allowed us to have separation, but it's unfortunate because their greed destroyed the company. And it led to the investors taking everything back and then having to close the company, all this other stuff. What gets really interesting as we fast forward this is the first person I met, that first partner, he ended up getting cancer during this process. And
so the one that was stealing and doing this crazy stuff, while he was doing that, he got cancer?
No, so the very first partner, so the one I met that the bad partner ended up corroding. Yeah. So he ended up getting cancer like during the cleanup phase of all of this. And he ends up passing, unfortunately, like 6 months later. And the manipulative partner, the one that stole everything and talked this guy into doing everything, ends up marrying his widow.
No. Whoa.
So not only was this guy so manipulative that he greedy took over a company and imploded it and cost the investors money and cost me money and my other partner money, it created this turbulence where like this other partner gets cancer and dies, which is very unfortunate. And he was a great guy. And then this guy ends up marrying his widow. And so like it shows the depth of just darkness with this person. Like there's nothing off limits. And I think that to me, I just watched all that part as a spectator because we just kept our distance. And so it's unfortunate because you see the guy struggling, and I think he stepped in to be a friend during that process. But it's interesting because, like I said, he marries his widow and then moves in and is like stepdad to the deceased partner's kids, and then they end up fast tracking getting divorced. And I don't know any of the details after that, but this whole situation is so crazy because it shows how dark and manipulative people can be. And so when you really go back, what we found out is there was no patent pending on the product.
Wait,
This guy was
they claim manufacturer or the original guy who died?
the manufacturer.
The
The manufacturer that so there was no patent pending, forged documents, all like it was all just a ruse. And we all were just along for the ride. And it turns out that this was like his dozen time doing it. And he always does it in a way where there's no trackable, tangible paper. And so I share all of this story. And when you asked about horror stories, sure, I could talk about the clients in the cat cafe, the clients in the marketing agency, the whatever. There's a lot of that. But this one's so interesting to me because it had the potential to be something amazing. And when you move forward on trust alone, right, without doing due diligence and having proper separation, right, where you're doing JV partnerships and testing, working together and all these things before forming a company, when you're not doing due diligence and really digging into who's involved and their background and validating stuff and listening, and like, this is what you can expose yourself to. And unfortunately, it ended up costing me over $100,000 in payments for some stuff I personally guaranteed during the process. And I ended up becoming liable for, even though I wasn't part of the company when the debt settlement came. And so, years of payments and, a distaste with that investor group, which is totally understandable. Like, there's so many lessons in this story about doing business the right way and being very, very aware of people who are trying to take advantage of situations or take advantage of partnerships or take advantage of opportunities. And so, fast is important in certain moments, but not in these moments.
Wow, so that's so powerful. One, you said at another point in passing a moment ago that I think is worth diving into a bit, which is, you said this had the potential to be amazing. What I want to comment on that is, all the time I ask myself, how come this product doesn't exist? The universe clearly needs XYZ. How come it's there? Or whatever. These people own a patent for things QRST. Like how, and I would pay money for that. How come it didn't happen? And I think a lesson that like business has taught me again and again is that so many things that are potentially amazing just don't happen because of these like conflicts within the team. They happen to choose this bad manufacturer, or the person they hired to be the CEO happened to have this other issue, or a key team member died of cancer. I was CEO at a company 15 years ago where the CTO died in a car crash, and it was like painful. And like now I'm obsessed with like backup keys, security, and so on. But like back then, he was the only one with access to far too much. And I think there's this powerful lesson here that amazing things don't happen because teams break down.
Yeah, it's all the reasons why I think when you go, like if you're ever pitching investors, right, typically for seasoned investors, it's a very rough process. It's a lot of pitching. It's a lot of no's. And there's this idea that like dumb money funds fast, and not saying those investors were dumb because they're very savvy investors in different sectors, but it was their first time investing outside of real estate. And now hindsight, like it was great that the investment came in, right? Because it unlocked the path forward, but they were not equipped to actually support the business other than finances. And because of that, they didn't do the due diligence round that you might see in a typical VC or angel investment, where they actually look at credit reports for the founding members. They look into the bios, they do previous calls on partners and businesses and all these things. And they really dig in. And like, that's the stuff you start to learn on like, okay, how do we balance partners? So to your point, right? Like duplication, Do you have life insurance in place for the founding members and partners to make sure
Right.
someone can get bought out in case something unfortunate happens?
Exactly.
Like there's all of these things that I think people recommend as best practices. And I think it falls on deaf ears a lot, unless it's happened to you. And unfortunately, I can give you story after story after story of business I've talked to that have had crazy things happen. And so I think that a huge lesson for myself is always playing defense now, right? Like what could go wrong in the
Interesting.
worst case, right? And how do we guard against that? And so like I teased, we're launching this other product in the golf space. And now we've done a joint venture partnership where we all have our own companies and each company does specific things for the project that yield a unified result. At a certain level of cash flow, we then can make a decision to get rid of the joint venture and form a company with the cash from the company. And then we all become equity owners as outlined. And so why do we do it that way? Well, we do it that way because now we get to date, right? We get to experience like, are you all full of crap or do you actually deliver what you say you'll deliver? Does the product have validity so that we're actually going to form a company after revenue and everyone has some skin in the game? Or like, so it really has reset how I look at scaling my own projects. And then when I have other people talking about like, Devin, I'm going to partner with this person. Here's why. It's like, okay, let's just go ahead and slow down. Why do you think you need them? Right? Let's get very clear. Let's look at a SWOT analysis for yourself, a SWOT analysis for your business. Let's do a goal setting for 3, 5, and 10 years to figure out where you're going. And then we can explore, are they really a good partner or not? And then do you really have to give up equity? Or could you guys just do some sort of joint venture between your companies that still yields a, 1 + 1 = 4 outcome, right? But protects both parties and makes it easier to get divorced, right? And so those are the kind of things that the outcome of this shows is, sometimes there is ease in a path forward and you just start running because it's easy. But like you really do need to slow down and learn how to protect yourself, especially in partnerships, especially in projects that are getting funded. Another big lesson I took away is don't personally guarantee anything.
Good lesson.
Right. So I personally guaranteed 2 pieces of like equipment in this business. And because my credit was good and the other partner that got kicked out with me, his credit was good, we ended up PGing it. And then we ended up being the ones having to make the payments back because the investors were like, well, the company's closed. It's your problem now. And so we went back to those things and went, well, you have the equipment. And they're like, that's great, but you signed a note, so you owe us. And then we had to hire an attorney and we had to negotiate payments. Had we not done a PG and that equipment was owned inside the company and we had leveraged the right investment or the right structure down payment so that it could be inside the company, then when we got kicked out, we wouldn't have had that lagging credit debt problem
Right. It would have been
carried into our personal life, right? Again, another lesson learned. You don't know that until you've had to deal with a personal guarantee because you just signed for the equipment like, no big deal. Like the company's making the payment. Well, when the company stops making the payment, you're liable, which means your house, your future, your bank accounts, your stuff is on the line, not the company's.
I love it. Great lessons. I like your lesson that now you always play defense. And I make that same point all the time. But what's interesting is I just use very different words. I think I might adopt your terminology. Also, always play defense. I like this sports metaphor. Here's one of my ways of making that same point, which is I personally have a few different definitions of success. And one definition of success is not failing. You do something, it succeeds or it fails. That's it. So you want to succeed, that here's a really, really good formula. Every single day, ask yourself, if this fails, what is the most likely reason? And then just try to eliminate that reason. And then once you've eliminated the most likely reason it fails, then eliminate the second most likely reason it fails. Then the third. And eventually, if you've eliminated all reasons how it could reasonably fail, dude, then by definition, you're going to succeed. And this focusing on risk, focusing on the defense is the same point. Another way, or another sort of language that I use, that I emphasize to make the same sort of point is CYA. That covering your ass is very underrated because I was like, no, just plow on ahead. Dude, if you go 5% slower and you use that 5% of the time to just cover all your bases, look at the fine print, think about these different scenarios that could happen, I'd rather go 5% slower, maybe 20% slower in return for really protecting the downside.
So my wife and I have a board in our bathroom that has like it's our goal setting board for the year, but we have 5 things on it. And one of them is never make decisions, like make emotional decisions. And so a lot of the things that happened in that business and some other bad business decisions in the past were really tied to this, like making decisions in an emotional state, right? Which typically means you're making them quick. You're just making them on gut. Like you haven't really stepped back. You haven't had an outside counsel. And when I say outside
Right.
counsel, that's just a neutral party, right? Could be a friend, could be actual counsel, right? But you've also got to go seek that outside advice and listen, right?
Yeah.
Talk to your CPA, talk to your business attorney, talk to your mentor, your coach, other business owners, and get a feel for like, what am I not seeing? And to your point, cover your ass, right? Like what am I exposed to that I don't know I'm exposed to? And then how do I, again, play defense, right? How do I get protected?
I love it. It's great. I still feel like I want to comment the partner dying and then the bad guy marrying the widow, but I'm just kind of speechless. So I want to comment, but I don't even know what to say. It's just so dark to even think about that. And what's also powerful about that is it makes it human. It's not just bad business decision, bad partner isn't a bad thing, but this is like the lives of humans, like going in and marrying the widow. It goes now the situation is far beyond business.
Right.
Cool. And with that, we've got such an enormous list of lessons. The average episode you has 1 to 3 lessons, or 1 to 3 new lessons, because there's some lessons come up a lot. But we've got a whole bunch of super interesting and super useful lessons. Any final concluding thoughts you want to share, Devin, before we wrap up?
I think, yeah. So I think, like I said, when I loved the outreach and the conversation we had, and there are a lot of client horror stories and things that come to mind when I was engaging with this podcast. So first, I love it. I love the topic. I love that we get to talk about these things that like could be big mistakes. The commonality with a lot of those are moving forward, even when the little thing on your shoulder is telling you this is not the right client, this is not the right time, this is not the right thing. Like there are the voices. The issue is when you're running so fast, sometimes you don't hear the voices, or you just ignore them because you're like, ooh, yeah, but it's all working so good. But I've onboarded plenty of clients that I onboarded because the paycheck was needed or the money looked good. And then you end up having to fire them and write checks back and do all these untangling things later. And so it's not worth it. And so I really, really, really want to make sure that people spend time on their own values. So as a business owner, as someone who's onboarding clients, like what are your values? What are the things that are your personal identity that are non-compromisable, that are the things you stand for? And then how do those translate to your company and what's your company's mission, vision, values, right? And then that is non-negotiable, right? Like when you're onboarding partners, clients, board members, mentors, people in your sphere that support you or your company, if they're not aligned with those values, find someone else, because that's probably going to set you up for failure, because at some point that friction is going to break.
So love it. Deep, great points. I have a final observation on that, and then we can wrap up. I love your point about you have to listen to your instinct and listen to your voice. But when you're moving so fast, it's hard to. And I feel like you're hitting on this, like they're basically opposite pieces of wisdom. And by the way, I just want to point out, because like in startup wisdom, move fast and break things. Move fast. That's what you have to do to be successful. On the other hand, dude, like you move fast is exactly how things collapse. And they're both opposite pieces of wisdom. And part of the challenge of doing anything well is figuring out how to find the balance that works for you. And I just want to point out, as a fun final note, not really related, it's incredible to me how like the wisdom of the ages, the cliches that your parents always teach you about what to do, that everyone always says, it's incredible to me how often they contradict each other. Like wisdom often goes right against other pieces of wisdom. And here's an easy example. All the time people say actions speak louder than words. But what people also say all the time in different contexts is the pen is mightier than the sword. and and like if you think about those two, like they're actually saying the exact opposite things. Or the early bird gets the worm as compared to better late than never. Like it could go on and on and on. That wisdom contradicts other wisdom, and there's truth on both sides. And to do something awesome on your own, to where we're a true professional, true entrepreneur, in adult, you need to figure out how to take these different truths that seemingly contradict and how to synthesize them. That's everyone's challenge as they grow up.
I love so much that you shared that, because again, another nugget from a mentor, and this one really hit home, is everyone needs a mentor and a coach, right? You got to go seek advice. You need to get an outside perspective. However, they can only give you the best advice based on their perspective.
Yes.
And so often, and especially as a younger entrepreneur, not meaning age, just younger in my journey, I would hear the advice and be like, great advice, let me go do that. Because I take the advice, to your point, right? You take one of those truths, says, oh, that's the way it must be. Let me lean into that. Instead of taking the advice and then integrating that into your current situation and then making a decision. And so in both those truths, they both might be true, depending on where you're at in your journey. So sometimes, yeah, you need to ideate, get through MVP quickly and get through renditions in the process. And so speed is critical, right? So in a season, that might make sense. But in another season, you might need the other advice of slow down, look around, feel what's going on. But I think so often we hear the nugget, whether it's on a social clip, us talking, and then people just start running with that idea. And it's like, whoa. Listen to the idea, look around you and figure out, like, does that thing actually apply to your current situation correctly? Or is that advice for someone else?
I agree. And it's easy to forget how important it is to apply advice in the appropriate context. Classic startup advice, move fast and break things. I'm sorry, if I'm building the website for a bank, you can move super fast. But dude, a problem in your code, and like literally they can lose billions of dollars of deposits. And so like, dude, if you're building a bank website, you don't want to move that fast. So you have to take the wisdom and apply it to your context. I love it. Devin, I don't remember the last time in almost 80 episodes that I've gotten this many pieces of wisdom, all packed in 45 minutes. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today. And everyone who's made it to the end, I hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as we have recording it. Until next time, thank you again, Devin.
Thank you.